They auctioned a widow and her baby like cattle. The cowboy rode in and said, "She's not for sale." The auctioneer raised his hammer and shouted a price for the widow. But before it could fall, the heavy wooden doors burst open, and a cowboy's voice thundered, "Stop! She's not for sale." No one in the dusty town square expected silence to sound so loud. The crowd had gathered like vultures, boots scraping the ground, eyes cold with hunger. The platform stood in the center, rough wood splintered by years of cruelty. It was once used for cattle auctions. Today, it held a woman and her baby. Her name was Mary Caldwell. A widow. Barefoot. Holding her infant son tight against her chest as if her arms alone could protect him from a world that had already decided they were worthless. Mary's husband had died 6 months earlier, crushed beneath a collapsing mine tunnel owned by men who never showed their faces. When he died, the debts didn't die with him. The land was taken. The house was seized. And when she couldn't pay what she didn't owe, they took the last thing she had left, her freedom. The baby whimpered softly. Mary didn't cry. She had cried all her tears the night she buried her husband under a sky that didn't care. Today, her eyes were empty, not because she was weak, but because she had already faced the worst kind of death, the death of dignity. "Strong young widow," the auctioneer shouted. "Healthy. Obedient. Comes with the child." The crowd laughed. Men placed bids the same way they would bid on livestock, casually, cruelly, with no shame. Mary stared at the ground, whispering to her baby, her voice trembling like a prayer trying not to break. "Don't be afraid, my love. Mama's here." But inside she knew, Mama couldn't save him. The hammer lifted. And then, the doors slammed open. Dust flew as boots hit the floor with purpose. Every head turned. A tall figure stood in the doorway, sunlight behind him like judgment itself. He wore a weathered hat, a long coat, and carried the kind of stillness that only men who've seen too much carry. His name was Ethan Cole. A cowboy. A man the frontier whispered about, not because he was violent, but because he was unmovable. He walked forward slowly, every step echoing. "Who's selling her?" he asked calmly. The auctioneer scoffed. "Mind your business." Ethan's eyes lifted, sharp, steady, unafraid. "She's not cattle," he said. "And that child isn't a bonus." The room shifted. Mary looked up for the first time. Their eyes met. She didn't see pity in his face. She saw respect. The auctioneer raised the hammer again. "Last chance." Ethan placed a single coin on the table. The sound cut through the room like a gunshot. "I'm not bidding," Ethan said. "I'm ending this." Gasps spread. Men laughed nervously. But Ethan didn't move. "Untie her," he said. And for the first time in years, fear changed sides. They could have killed the cowboy that day. Instead, they learned what happens when a man decides he's no longer afraid. The town didn't forgive Ethan for what he did. They never forgive men who remind them of their own shame. That night, Ethan rode out with Mary and her baby behind him, her hands shaking as she clutched his coat. She expected betrayal at every turn. Men like him didn't just appear, not for people like her. "Why did you do it?" she finally whispered. Ethan didn't answer right away. "My mother was sold once," he said quietly. "I was too young to stop it." Mary felt her chest tighten. "She didn't survive," he added. "I promised myself no one else would stand on that block while I still breathed." Trouble followed them like a shadow. The men who ran the auction didn't lose money, they lost power. And powerful men don't accept loss kindly. They hunted Ethan, burned his cattle, threatened Mary. One night, guns surrounded the cabin. Mary stood shaking, holding her baby. "Leave," she begged Ethan. "They'll kill you." Ethan loaded his rifle slowly. "Then they'll have to live knowing why," he said. The standoff lasted till dawn. And when the sun rose, something unexpected happened. The townsfolk came. Women first. Then men. People who had once watched in silence now stood beside Ethan, because courage is contagious, and shame grows heavy when carried too long. The auctioneers fled. The practice ended. Mary wasn't a widow anymore, she was a survivor. Months passed. Mary learned to laugh again. Her son took his first steps on land that was finally free. And Ethan, the man who rode in when no one else would, became family, not by words but by choice. Years later, when the boy asked who saved them, Mary smiled and said, "No, my love. He reminded the world that we were never for sale." Sometimes evil doesn't win because it's strong. It wins because good people stay silent. All it takes to change everything is one voice brave enough to say, "She's not for sale."